Chapter 81. This venerable one's Bugui. Meanwhile, in Ru Fengsec's private room on the third floor, Yangi stood tall and elegant by the intricately carved ornamental wooden railing, eyebrows drawn together tightly and lips pressed into a thin line. Yegongse, Elder Chu sent us here for that holy weapon. If you bid on the butterfly-boned beauty feast as well, I'm afraid we won't have enough left. It's fine. I'll use my own funds. The attendants realized that Yangi had already made up his mind, so they exchanged a couple of furtive glances, but said nothing else. The starting bid is 10 million gold, the second pavilion master of Xuanyuan Pavilion announced in her precise tones. Ladies and gentlemen, bidding is now open. 11 million! 12 million! The commotion rose alongside the soaring price. 19 million! I bid 25 million! When the bid shot up by 6 million in one go, quite a number of cultivators sighed and sat down, shaking their heads. At this time, several silver taps floated down from the second-floor booth to the pavilion master. She collected them from the air and nimbly fanned them out in her hand, a price written on each one. The current highest bid? She scanned the taps, then announced clearly. From the Xuan booth, 35 million. 35 million? The crowd sucked in a cold breath and collectively turned to look at the Xuan booth on the second floor. Lights glowed hazily from behind the gentle drifting of the silver curtains, but there was no way to see what kind of person was sitting inside. You could buy a whole palace on Rainbow Isle with that money. Whose bid was it? A little excessive, don't you think? If they can throw around that kind of money, they gotta be from one of the 10 great sects. I wonder which one. Chu Wanning's eyes were closed. When he heard the price, he asked Moran, Did you bring enough money? Absolutely not. Meeting Song Qiutong was the last thing Moran had expected to happen here, and he only snapped out of his shock when he heard Chu Wanning say this. What does shizun mean to do? He asked, alarmed. Buy her. Moran's eyes widened as he waved his hands frantically. No way, don't do it. That woman will just be a burden. Where would we even put her? We'd have to rent an extra horse when we traveled and book another room at night. Nope, don't do it. Who said anything about bringing her along? I'll let her go after. Chu Wanning opened his eyes and held out his hand with a straight face. Give it here. Moran clutched his money pouch. I don't have any. I'll repay you when we get back. This money is for the holy weapon. Don't you already have Yangi? What do you need another for? Hand it over. Moran had no words. He felt a headache coming on. This Song Qiutong. When he'd met her in his past life, she had been a disciple of Ru Fengsec, and he had been razing Ru Fengsec's cities to the ground. His heart had clenched at the sight of her. She looked a little like Shimei, so he'd spared her life. As time went on, she had proved herself to be clever and docile, and her temperament had been rather similar to Shimei's as well, so he had eventually made her his empress. That had become one of Moran's greatest regrets. Chu Wanning and that kind heart of his, concealed by his cold exterior, actually wanted to buy her. How could Moran possibly allow that to happen? Forget 40 million gold. He wouldn't take this woman for 4 coppers. As a matter of fact, even if they paid him 40 million, he still wouldn't take her. They were stuck in a stalemate when a tab floated down from the third floor. It was gold, a buyout tab. The gold tab represented the highest possible bid at Xuanyuan Pavilion. No price was written upon it, for the tab itself denoted 50 million gold. Once this kind of bid was put down, no one had the means to keep competing. Hence, buyout tab. For a second, the crowd was dead silent, before it exploded in an uproar. Ru Fengsec! Ru Fengsec pulled out the buyout tab. Chu Wanning turned away from Moran and his death grip on his money pouch to look outside. They were at just the right angle to see the first room on the third floor. Yangi didn't care for things like hiding his face. He had pulled aside the snow moon silk curtains, meant for secrecy ages ago, and was standing by the carved railing with his hands clasped lightly behind his back. His expression was solemn, and his handsome face betrayed nothing. He glanced down at the ruckus below, seemed somewhat aggravated, and turned to walk back into the private room. Moran let out a breath. "Shizun can rest easy," he said. "I lived with this Jägungse back at Peach Blossom Springs, so I'm fairly well acquainted with him. He's a good person. He won't do anything cruel to that butterfly-boned beauty feast." Meanwhile, inside Ru Fengsek's room on the 3rd floor, Yangi sat down at a table covered with satin cloth that was intricately embroidered in gold and silver. There, he poured himself a cup of fragrant tea. When he finished it, knocks sounded from outside the booth. Yangi's voice was gentle and polite as he said, "Come in." "Yes, Yanxian, I've brought the butterfly-boned beauty feast for your inspection." "Thank you. You can go." Xuanyan Pavilion's maid left, and for a while there was nothing in the room but silence. The butterfly-boned beauty feast knelt on the floor, hands and feet bound by spells, panic in her eyes as her whole body trembled. Her peach blossom eyes were red at the edges from crying, and she looked truly pitiful. Yangi glanced at her, not a shred of impropriety in that clear, principled gaze of his, and lifted a hand to dissipate the spells. "It's cold on the floor. You must be scared. Have a seat and some warm tea." The butterfly-boned beauty feast did not answer, still trembling, her beautiful eyes wide and translucent like glass. She stayed where she was, cowering on the floor, too scared to talk, much less more. Yangi sighed and gestured for the attendants to bring her a cloak. "Please don't worry, miss. I didn't buy you for cultivation purposes. Put on the cloak, then we can talk." You... When Yangi saw that she still wasn't moving and was only staring pitifully up at him, he shook his head with an exasperated smile. He got down on one knee to be on eye level with her. "My name is Yangi. May I ask for yours?" "This one's name is Song." She gave Yangi a hesitant look through teary eyes. "Song Qiutong. Thank you, Jägungse." Downstairs, Moran was deep in thought. In his past life, Song Qiutong had been a disciple of Ru Fengsect by the time he'd met her. Yangi must have saved her from the auction house in that life too. While butterfly-boned beauty feasts generally weren't treated like ordinary people, it was a different matter if they were a disciple of a major cultivation sect. Moran sighed internally. He didn't know Yangi that well, only that he was an upright, principled person, and had been second only to Chu Wanning in terms of strength in their past life. Moran had once crossed swords with him when he had slaughtered the people of Ru Fengsect's 22 cities. That fierce, imposing swordsmanship and dignified posture had left a deep impression on him. 72 cities of Ru Fengsect spread across the land, and Moran had taken them all out without the slightest bit of effort. And the lords of those cities, with their run-on titles and widespread tales of might and glory, each and every one of them had been as dirt under his heels. All save for this Yangi, and only Yangi. The 7 cities under his command gave Moran endless trouble. Even in the end, when the cities had fallen and Yangi knelt, bloodied on a field of corpses, his eyes were still clear and unrelenting. By the time the Nangong leaders of Ru Fengsect had since fled, and multitudes of others were groveling for their lives at Moran's feet. However, Yangi only knelt there, with his eyes closed and brows drawn tightly together, his expression frosty. Before killing him, Moran asked, genuinely, "Will you surrender?" "I will not." Moran smiled from where he sat on the gilded seat adorned with a dragon and phoenix, which was meant for the master of Ru Fengsect. Beneath dark lashes, his eyes swept across the throngs of people before him. Ordinary disciples aside, there were 6 or 7 city lords and more than a dozen generals, all of them prostrating on the dusty ground and quivering. A crow circled in the ashen-grey sky above banners the color of blood, cawing. Moran lifted a nonchalant hand. "Kill them all." Before death, Yangi said, "All the gleaming cities of Rufeng, and not one real man to be found." Blood splattered through the air. Moran held in his arms his newest acquisition, the beautiful Song Qiutong, her loveliness unparalleled, her delicate body shivering non-stop at the hellish scene before her. "Don't be afraid, there's a good girl. You'll be staying with this venerable one from now on." Moran stroked her hair, smiling. "Come, tell me your name again. What did you do at Rufeng sect? I forgot what you said earlier."
"This one's name is Song Qiutong."
Her voice was frightened.
I was Yangi's maid."
Yangi's maid. That was what she had told Moran. As for how Song Qiutong, a butterfly-boned beauty feast, had been allowed to join Rufeng sect and how she had become Yangi's maid, Moran had no idea. It was only on this day, after his rebirth and at the Xuanyuan Pavilion, that he finally realized that Yangi was the one who had paid an exorbitant sum to save her from the clutches of danger. Hardly anyone knew that a large part of the reason for Yangi's final defeat at Moran's hands had been thanks to information divulged by Song Qiutong. The thought made Moran scowl as the loathing he felt for this woman grew even deeper. He must have been out of his mind when he thought she was anything like Shimei. The second pavilion master's pleasant voice interrupted Moran's thoughts.
"The last item at this auction is a masterless holy weapon. It has been put up for auction on behalf of a third party."
There were always rumors floating around before each auction as to what kind of precious treasures would be up for sale. This, in contrast to the wild reaction to the butterfly-boned beauty feast earlier, the gathered crowd of cultivators actually settled down a bit, though they were still antsy. The white jade lotus bloomed once again, and the stone platform rose slowly. Upon it lay a satin case with silver embellishments of celestial bodies and elegant landscapes. The satin case was slim and intricately embroidered, and anyone in the know could tell with a glance that the fine needlework came from the faint embroidery house of Gusu, Xianyuan Pavilion. Holy weapon aside, this case alone was worth hundreds of gold.
"This holy weapon was found at the burial mound on Jun Mountain. Its former master had passed, and we at Xuanyuan Pavilion have verified that it has yet to take a new master."
The second pavilion master paused before continuing.
"As everyone knows, a holy weapon's name is engraved on its body. However, time has worn away the inscription on this holy weapon, and only one character remains discernible: Bugui, for return."
"Enough prattling," someone muttered. "Open the box already." "Yeah, let it be. You'll get used to it. Xuanyuan Pavilion always does it like this. Gotta talk it up before showing us the goods. I guess." Amused by the chatter, Moran turned toward Chu Wanning to quip, only to see Chu Wanning's face pale as frost, his sword-state eyebrows tight and strained as slender fingers of cold jade pressed against his temple. Startled, he hurriedly asked, "Shizun, are you okay?" Suddenly I don't feel so good." "Don't feel good how? Did you catch another cold?" Moran scooted over and felt his forehead. "Your temperature's fine." Chu Wanning shook his head without saying anything. He looked all out of sorts. Unsure of what else to do, Moran said, "I'll pour you some tea." He filled a cup with steaming tea, paused, then added a bit of the recently purchased tapir fragrance too. Sage Hanlin's medicines were renowned the world over, and indeed Chu Wanning seemed to be better after drinking the tea mixed with the dew. Some color came back to his face as he returned his attention to the auction downstairs. Moran tidied up the tea set and poured himself another cup.
Although there's no way to know this holy weapon's full name, since the stars have aligned to bring it back to the world, and its inscription already contains the word Gui, Xuanyuan Pavilion has for the time being named it Guilai, the Returned.
Someone in the crowd finally lost his patience. "Pavilion Master, you've talked it up enough," he yelled. "We're already on the edge of our seats. Open the box and let's have a look at that holy weapon."
The second Pavilion Master smiled. "All things in due time, Xianjun. In accordance with the laws of the cultivation world, when the master of a holy weapon passes, the weapon shall be inherited by his blood heirs. Guilai was found at a burial mound, and we have no way to know its original master's identity. However, once the case is opened, all present are welcome to reach out with the spiritual energy to test the weapon. If it resonates with someone, that will indicate that they are of the original master's bloodline, and Guilai will naturally belong to them, free of charge."
As if something that coincidental could ever happen. The gathered cultivators burst out laughing. "That's right, what are the chances? Might as well try it though, can't hurt." The second Pavilion Master beamed at the crowd.
"Indeed, it can't hurt to try your luck,"
she agreed crisply.
"Now then, if I may have your attention, we will be removing the lid."
She snapped her fingers, and a pair of Guyuye disciples, both young girls of around 15 or 16, approached from either side. They flew up and landed gracefully on the lotus platform, then placed their slender, jade-like hands on the satin case. Each carried an intricate crystal key that they inserted carefully into the keyholes on the case. There were 2 clicks and the case unlocked. As Moran watched the scene before him, he found himself thinking back to when he had acquired Jiangui at Qincheng Lake. It had been clearly explained to him then that only the person he loved most in all world could unlock Ever Yearning, but for some reason the brocade box had opened in Chu Wanning's hands. The audience held their breath, countless eyes staring at that narrow box from beneath hooded cloaks. The gold-embroidered lid lifted slowly as the very air strained with tension, like a bow pulled to its limits. Despite the thousands of people present, it was so quiet that one could have heard a single hair fall to the ground. Every single person was staring unblinkingly at the ancient blade that had been revealed inside the box, aged by time. Some greedily, some curiously, some appreciatively. Only Moran's eyes flew wide the instant he saw the weapon lying there. The color drained rapidly from his face. He had lived 2 lifetimes, owned 2 holy weapons, and crossed blades with over a dozen other wielders thereof. He had thought that he wouldn't care a whit about whatever holy weapon Xuanyuan Pavilion was selling. He had been wrong.
"The holy weapon Guilai."
The second Pavilion Master's crisp voice shattered the silence.
"A long blade, 4 feet in length, 3 inches in width, scabbardless, with a body of pure black that does not reflect light."
Moran's fingertips shook minutely as a word slipped past his lips. "Bugui." No return. Our past lies on a vermilion bridge in emerald fields. Another year gone, yet still I wait, for you do not return. Moran, now that you have your own holy weapon, why have you asked me to seal its spiritual consciousness rather than give it a name? To answer you, Shizun, this disciple is uncultured and has only one chance to name it. I worry that I'll pick a bad one and be stuck with it.
Aran, have you still not decided on a name for your long blade? Surely you can't keep calling it blade this and blade that.
It's fine. I'm just taking my time to think about it. It's a holy weapon after all. It deserves a super awesome name. Then Shimei died. Moran asked Chu Wanning to release the seal so that he could name his holy weapon Mingjing. However, at that time, Chu Wanning said that his spiritual energy was still corrupted from the fight with the ghost realm, and that he did not have the strength to release the sealing spell. So he could only leave it as it was. Later, Moran and Chu Wanning finally severed ties, and Moran was loath to ask him about unsealing it again. And so, the blood-stained long blade remained nameless throughout all those years and innumerable battles. It no longer mattered. Not a soul in the world was unaware of Mo Wei and the hellish blade in his hand, which fed on blood and hatred. In the end, Chu Wanning died as well. The name-sealing spell that had lain on Moran's blade for more than a decade disappeared with him. That night, Moran downed copious amounts of pear blossom wine. A bit tipsy, he ran his hand along the ice-cold body of the blade, no longer able to tell if what he felt was ecstasy or sorrow. He flicked it and listened to its reverberations, like the sound of drums and horns on the battlefield, like a high-tongue chilled to the root. He lay on the roof of Wushan Palace, laughing uncontrollably, waxing from delight to deranged. Moran didn't remember if he had shed any tears that night, only that when he woke in the morning, the long blade that had gone nameless for over a decade had been engraved with 2 clear-cut characters. Bugui. For you do not return. Never again. But why had the weapon that had accompanied him throughout endless battles in his last life appeared in this world reborn? And how had it ended up at Xuanyuan Pavilion auction? Before Moran could think on it further, all the thousands of cultivators at the auction house released streams of spiritual energy, each rushing to commune with Bugui. Moran watched mutely. It will be no use. Since it was Bugui, and since Moran was here, under no circumstances would any other person in the world be able to command that long blade. Did its appearance have something to do with that little bastard hiding behind the scenes? If so, then his decision to release Bugui into the world at this time meant that he knew Moran and Chu Wanning were trying to track him down, and that his goal wasn't in fact to test other people's spiritual essences. Then what was he trying to do? Furthermore, was this Bugui real, or was it merely bait, like those fakes at Jincheng Lake? Mind filled with questions, Moran reached out with the tendril of his own spiritual energy. If Bugui wasn't a fake, then it would surely resonate with him. If he wanted to avoid notice, he couldn't let the resonance be too obvious, so if he only used a little bit. He had just released the tiniest thread of energy when a faint groan came from behind him. Shizun? Moran ripped his head around to find Chu Wanning collapsed at the table, brows locked and lips blue. His snow-white robes spread out like smoke, and his handsome face was paler than frost. He had passed out, his eyes screwed shut like some chronic illness had flared up within him. Moran had never expected something like this to happen so suddenly. He panicked, pulling back his spiritual energy and running to Chu Wanning's side to cradle him in his arms. Shizun, what's wrong?